What if the most heartbreaking royal update wasn't the part you heard on the news, but the part you didn't hear at all? Because for the last 2 years, every time the palace released a carefully measured statement, it left the public with the same uneasy feeling. This isn't just a headline. This is a family carrying pressure that most people couldn't survive for a week, while the whole world stares. And the moment everything changed, it started with one announcement that felt like it belonged to another era, until it didn't, in February 2024. Buckingham Palace confirmed King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer and had begun treatment. Public-facing duties were postponed. State work continued. The words were calm, almost clinical, but the message behind them was loud. The monarch's schedule and the entire machine around him was about to be rewritten in real time. The royal family, because here's what people forget. The monarchy doesn't just run on tradition. It runs on rhythm, appearances, ceremonies, a constant signal of stability. And when that rhythm breaks, people don't just get curious. They get nervous. And that nervousness didn't stay quiet for long, because while the public was still processing the king's diagnosis, another shock landed, this time from the very center of the next generation. In March 2024, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, released a video message. She was undergoing preventative chemotherapy after cancer was found following abdominal surgery. It wasn't the kind of moment that fuels casual gossip. It was the kind of moment that stops people mid-scroll and makes them sit up straight. Reuters +1, and suddenly, the questions got darker. Not because the palace said anything dramatic, but because they didn't. Details stayed private. Timelines stayed careful. And in that gap, the internet did what it always does. It filled the silence with noise. Now, to be clear, the wildest claims online were exactly that, claims. Not proof, not confirmation. But when two senior royals are both facing serious health battles within weeks of each other, even normal schedule changes start to look suspicious to the public, and that's the first secret behind why royal updates hit so hard. People aren't only reacting to what's said, they're reacting to what feels unsaid, but that still wasn't the whole storm, because while the King and the Princess of Wales were dealing with their own realities, the rest of the inner circle was being stretched thin, and the public started noticing the strain at the edges. Late in 2024, Queen Camilla stepped back from engagements due to a chest infection, with Buckingham Palace saying doctors advised rest. She missed major events, then later returned and said she was on the mend. Reuters +2. Reuters +2 on the surface. That sounds simple. People get sick. They recover. Life moves on. But in royal life, timing matters. Optics matter. And when the monarch is in treatment, the consort being off schedule even briefly can trigger a new wave of what's happening behind the scenes. Talk. That's when the story stopped feeling like one difficult chapter and started feeling like a chain reaction. And then came the moment that made even the calmest royal watchers pause. In March 2025, Buckingham Palace said the king experienced temporary side effects after scheduled cancer treatment and required a short period of observation in hospital. He returned home, but engagements were postponed as a precaution. Reuters that detail hospital observation is exactly the kind of phrase that sounds normal in a medical context and terrifying in a public one. Because the public doesn't hear temporary side effects. They hear, how bad is it? They don't hear precautionary. They hear, is this getting worse? And that's when the bigger conversation exploded again. Especially online, you started seeing posts suggesting the monarchy could be heading toward a constitutional nightmare. People throwing around words like abdication and regency and succession crisis. And none of that was confirmed. None of it was official. It was speculation driven by fear, uncertainty, and the simple reality that the monarchy rarely explains more than it has to. But here's the part that really hooks people. Even if rumors aren't true, they can still reveal what the public is afraid of. And the public's fear was simple. What happens if the people holding the institution together are pushed past their limit? Then, in early 2025, something shifted. Not because everything was suddenly fine, but because the tone changed. In January 2025, Kate announced she was in remission and said she remained focused on recovery. That one-word remission hit like a release of breath that people didn't realize they'd been holding. Reuters +1, and soon after her public presence began returning in a slow, controlled wake, carefully spaced appearances, meaningful moments, the kind of return that signals, I'm here, but I'm protecting my energy. People.com+1. But while the public wanted to celebrate a brighter turn, the monarchy still had another problem to solve, one that had nothing to do with treatment schedules, because health wasn't the only threat to stability. Scandal was still circling the family like a storm cloud that refuses to move on. In October 2025, Reuters reported King Charles stripped Prince Andrew of his royal titles and removed him from Royal Lodge. A move described as protecting the monarchy from the damage of ongoing controversy linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Reuters+1 that wasn't just a family decision, it was a message. It said, the era of letting the problem linger is over. It said, the brand matters more than the discomfort of cleaning house. And it told royal watchers something else. Something they rarely say out loud when the monarchy is under pressure from health. It becomes less tolerant of chaos. And just when it felt like the family couldn't take another complicated headline, a different kind of headline appeared in September 2025. Reuters reported Prince Harry met King Charles for the first time in about 20 months. The report framed it as a possible first step toward easing a very public rift. Reuters+1 now. Nobody outside the room can claim to know what was said. That's the truth. But the symbolism did the talking for them. A meeting like that, after that long, sends a signal that something is changing, or at least being tested. And that opened the door for a new wave of online debate. Is the family trying to heal? Or are they trying to stabilize? Because when the king's health becomes a recurring topic, every relationship around him starts to look like strategy. And that brings us to the latest update. The one that made so many people stop and reread the wording twice. In December 2025, Charles shared that his cancer treatment schedule would be reduced in 2026, describing it as a milestone and crediting early diagnosis and effective intervention. The Guardian+1, that's good news, real good news. But it also does something else. It reminds everyone this is ongoing. It reminds everyone the monarchy isn't dealing with a short, clean crisis that ends with a neat bow. It's dealing with a long, unpredictable reality, while still trying to show up, smile, and represent a nation. And when you stack the timeline diagnosis, treatment, side effects, another senior royal's recovery, a consort's illness, major title removals, family meetings, reconciliation attempts, you start to see the shape of the bigger story. This isn't just about one person's health. It's about whether the monarchy can handle multiple stress fractures at the same time without breaking, because the modern monarchy has a problem past monarchies. Didn't people demand visibility? They demand answers. They want authenticity. But they also punish vulnerability. They say they want the royals to be human, right up until the moment the royals act human. That's why every update becomes a test. Every public appearance becomes a clue hunt. Every change in schedule becomes a theory. And yes, rumors are still out there. People still speculate about the future, about what contingency plans might exist, about who's quietly preparing for what. But speculation isn't the real story. The real story is what's already visible. If you look closely, a royal family trying to keep the institution steady while living through an era of constant scrutiny, health, uncertainty, and reputational landmines. So when people ask, what happened to King Charles? The honest answer is, a lot happened, and not all of it fits neatly into a headline. A diagnosis that forced the palace to adapt. The royal family, a brief health scare that reminded the public how fragile routine can be. Reuters, a wave of public anxiety that turned silence into suspicion. A family trying to protect privacy while staying visible enough to feel stable. And, finally, a hopeful signal that treatment may ease in the year ahead. The Guardian+1, but here's the question that hangs in the air now, and it's why the world keeps watching. Are we watching a monarchy that's adapting to survive? Or a monarchy being forced to change faster than it's ready for? Because the next few updates won't just shape King Charles' reign, they might decide what the monarchy looks like for an entire generation. And here's the part most people miss. When Buckingham Palace says treatment, it doesn't mean the king disappears. In the original February 5, 2024 statement, the palace made a point of saying he would keep doing state business and official paperwork, even while postponing public-facing duties. That one line matters because it's basically the monarchy's emergency mode. Reduce visibility, keep the engine running. The royal family, but the modern internet doesn't understand emergency mode. It reads silence as a clue. It treats every missing appearance like a warning sign. And once that cycle begins, even a normal decision like postponing an event out of caution can turn into a full-on panic spiral. Which is exactly why March 2025 hit so hard, because on March 27, 2025, the palace confirmed the king had temporary side effects after treatment and spent a brief period under observation in hospital. They called it a minor issue. They said it was precautionary. And they even noted he returned to Clarence House. Reuters +1, but online. People didn't hear minor. They heard, this is getting serious. And here's where the story gets tricky, because the most viral narratives aren't always the most accurate. They're the most emotional. They're the ones that sound like something big is being hidden, so rumors started flooding the gaps. And just to be clear, these were rumors and verified chatter that spreads fast when public information is limited. Some posts claimed the monarchy was quietly preparing for major constitutional moves. Others swore there were plans being activated behind closed doors. None of that was confirmed by credible sources. But the sheer volume of it proved one thing. The public wasn't just worried about Charles. They were worried about what happens to the entire system when the figure at the center isn't at full strength. And then, right when people were bracing for more bad news, the tone shifted again, this time from Kensington Palace. On January 14, 2025, Kate visited the hospital where she had received treatment and said she was relieved to be in remission. That word hit like a sudden light in a dark hallway. It didn't erase what happened, but it signaled forward motion. Reuters +1, and that matters because, for the monarchy, momentum is oxygen. If one senior royal is stepping back and another is still recovering, the institution feels like it's holding its breath. When someone returns skillfully, slowly it sends a message. The bridge isn't collapsing, but even as that chapter started to look less terrifying, another pressure point kept resurfacing. And it wasn't medical, it was reputation, because the monarchy can survive illness. People empathize with illness. What it struggles to survive is the sense that it's protecting the wrong people. That's why the Prince Andrew situation became such a symbolic moment. In late October 2025, Reuters reported King Charles escalated actions against Prince Andrew by stripping him of all titles, leaving him to be known as Andrew Mountbatten. Windsor mid renewed pressure tied to Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein. Reuters +1, and you don't have to be a royal expert to understand the message there. That wasn't family drama. That was damage control at the highest level. A line in the sand. A signal to the public that the institution was willing to cut weight in order to protect what remains. But here's the twist. Moves like that can stabilize the monarchy externally while making things more complicated internally. Because every protect the institution decision forces the family to confront the hardest truth about royal life. You don't get to handle things privately when the public thinks it owns the story. And just when the pressure felt unbearable, September 2025 brought a headline that made people blink twice, Reuters reported. Prince Harry met King Charles for the first time in about 20 months, in what was described as a possible first step toward easing the rift. Reuters +1 now. Nobody outside that meeting can honestly claim they know what was said. But the optics alone were powerful because it suggested something that's easy to forget in all the noise. Even when the monarchy looks like an institution, it's still a family. And families don't always reconcile because it's convenient. Sometimes they do it because time starts feeling expensive. Which brings us to the most recent shift. The update that quietly changed the temperature of the entire conversation in mid-December 2025. King Charles shared good news that his cancer treatment schedule will be reduced in 2026, crediting early diagnosis, effective intervention, and following doctors' advice. Sky News +2, ABC +2, that's not just a health update, that's a storyline update. Because for months, the public narrative has been uncertainty, caution, wait and see. This was the first time in a while the message sounded like a corner was being turned. And of course, this is the point where the internet does what it always does. It immediately asks the next question. If the king is improving, what does the monarchy do next? Does it return to the old playbook tight silence, limited detail, Or does it continue shifting toward a more modern, style-measured honesty, selective openness, and a stronger emotional connection with the public? And here's where the unverified chatter comes back in, because even with positive updates, some royal watchers still speculate about long-term scenarios, whether the monarchy will need to streamline, whether duties will be redistributed more aggressively, whether working royals will become a smaller and more controlled group. That's not proven fact, it's debate. But it's debate that gets louder whenever the royal calendar changes. And the reason it sticks is simple. The monarchy isn't just trying to survive headlines, it's trying to survive a new era, one where mystery is seen as suspicious, but vulnerability is seen as weakness. So if you're wondering why these updates hit like emotional earthquakes, it's because they aren't only about health. They're about stability, continuity, trust. They're about whether the public still believes the institution can hold steady when life gets messy. And the wild part is, we're still in the middle of it. Because even with better news on treatment, heading into 2026, the monarchy has to prove something every single week, that it can keep functioning without feeling like it's hiding. So here's the question I'll leave you with, because it's the one that decides everything. Are we watching the royal family slowly rebuild strength? Or are we watching the crown learn, in real time, how fragile its old rules have become? And if you had to bet right now, does this era end with the monarchy looking more human and more secure? Or more exposed and more questioned than ever? If you want, I can keep going with 2 to 3 more sections that go deeper into the why. The silence fuels panic angle, plus a stronger end hook that pushes comments and watch time. It was the pattern. When the monarch's health becomes part of public life, the palace has one core goal: keep the country feeling like the system is still steady. That's why the February 2024 statement was so specific about one thing: yes, public duties pause, but state business continues. It's the difference between step back and step down. And the palace knows the public hears that difference, even when it's not said out loud. The royal family, but here's the problem. The more the palace relies on careful wording, the more people treat wording like a puzzle. So every time you